Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we dive into the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, growth strategist and lead content creator at Aries Media. I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. Each episode, we're going to sit down with industry leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to explore the real stories behind business growth, the pivotal moments, the surprising insights, and the hard-earned lessons that make all the difference. Hey, today, I'm actually really stoked because we have on Rick Snyder. He's the founder and CEO of Invisible Edge. Invisible Edge is a leadership consulting firm that helps businesses unlock their full potential through intuitive decision-making, which Rick actually wrote a book on that I've read, and it's a fantastic book. He's got a track record of driving engagement, productivity, and retention at scale. He's worked with some of the top leaders and teams in the world, and I'm just so stoked to have him on the show today. Rick, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, likewise. Absolutely. So again, we are so excited to have you on the show, and I know that there's so much that you will be able to contribute. So it's almost like, where do we even start, you know? So tell me about Invisible Edge. Like, this is your company that you founded, correct?
Yeah. So I've founded a few different businesses in the past. And so this most recent one, Invisible Edge, started in 2019. Little did we know what would be happening in 2020. But in 2019, sky looked like, it was just, there was no limits, right? And so basically, I'm really passionate about intuitive intelligence, about emotional intelligence, all the invisible conversations that are happening in a company and in a company culture that are not being talked about, that are being avoided or ignored, and realizing, having worked in many companies, having worked with many companies, that's often the thing that's slowing people down in terms of growth, are the conversations people are not having. And we can look at that in many different ways. And so that's really what got me interested in, well, how do we get better at trusting our gut? How do we get better at trusting our intuition to be able to read the room more effectively, which can benefit a business in so many different ways, but also how do we anticipate what wants to happen next? So that became a strong passion of mine. And then fast forward to today, it's really integrated in all that we do in terms of our leadership development, coaching from first-time managers all the way to C-suite, from startups to enterprise level. But our passion is people leadership. And it's often the class most of us never got on, how do you actually lead people?
Yeah.
That's what we specialize in.
Yeah. And I feel like that is missing from the conversation, because oftentimes when I'm looking at LinkedIn, there's these growth hacks and this little hack to do your company, and they kind of forget about the people. It's like, what can you do to change this versus like, what can we do to change this?
Here's it's just a big, I think, blind spot, which is surprising to me, is when you think about growth, most people right away go to sales and they go to marketing. And that makes sense, right? If you want your company to grow, you have to have those things in abundance, of course.
Yeah.
But what's amazing to me is people don't consider, what's my people growth strategy? Are my people actually engaged? Are they actually bought into what we're doing? Are they in alignment with where we're going? Do they even know what our vision is? Do they care? Do they have a career pathing and a trajectory for themselves in the organization? Are they actually getting coached and contributed to by their manager? People say my experience of my company culture is my experience of my manager.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Incredibly insightful point, because I feel like that is absolutely missing from the conversation. So what about the intuition element? This is something that you actually don't often hear about. And so I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, there's so many places we could go with this, but the bottom line is, I got to study a little more of the neuroscience behind intuition, and that we all literally have a neural network in almost every cell of our body is a neuron. And we have certain centers like of course, the executive center, the heart brain, and the gut brain that have a whole neurotransmitter ecosystem in their own right. And so what's amazing is when you start to tune into your whole bodily intelligence and you start to get more present in the moment and literally read the room of what's happening with your team, with the marketplace. People often talk about the vibes or the energies of something. We're literally picking up information all the time, especially in our subconscious mind. Yeah. Now, our conscious mind is not always aware of that. It moves a lot slower, actually, but our subconscious is able to pick up incredible speeds of information per second in a way that laps what our conscious mind can do. So why does that matter? The more a leader is able to actually develop their gut and their intuitive intelligence, they're able to make decisions faster. They're able to read the room more accurately. It helps with sales when you're talking to a prospect. It helps with a manager trying to intuit the needs of the team. Any kind of customer service facing professional, that's trying to intuit the needs of their customer and what's going to help address their issue or help improve their experience. So it's an incredible gift that you're not only giving yourself, but you're also giving those around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. So here's a big question. How have you used this to your own advantage in your company?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say I use it all the time where, like, when it comes to who do I want to bring on to my company? Who do I want to hire and recruit and bring on to my team? That's a big decision, right? It's a really important decision because, as I'm sure most of everyone that's listening to this has experienced before, someone might have the perfect resume, but not be the right fit for your company or your company culture, right? For whatever reasons that are, you have to actually interview and find that out and find out, do they have similar values? Do they have similar work ethic? You know, do they care about this? Are they a team player, even though they went to the best schools and have great experience? And so that's where intuition is an example of where I use that every day. Is even sometimes, do I want to work with that client? Is that client actually a good fit for us? Are we stretching too much and it's actually not our sweet spot of who we want to work with, right? And so we have to think about all the time these kind of decisions that are happening every day. And so I would say I use it all the time, but I'm going to be honest, and I hope this resonates for everybody. I still miss things left, right, and center. I don't always listen. I don't always listen to my intuition or always trust it. Still.
Yeah.
So it really is a practice that you have to cultivate over time. But I will say my goal is now, how do I listen to my intuition the first time, not the sixth time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a fantastic point. Is it's not about being perfect. It's more about progress than it is perfection, and that if you can have more wins more often versus always wins, which I think is an impossible thing to strive for.
Yes. And one question I get a lot is, well, is that like a skill you can actually build, or is it just you're born with it or not? Right? It's a question I get a lot. And I have experienced it as it's almost like any skill that you build. There are people that have greater gifts than others, just like in basketball or in music. Some people are going to be more musically inclined than other people, and they just have those attributes. And if I practice playing the violin every day, I'm going to get better.
Yeah.
No matter what. Same with intuition. So if I actually am consciously working on that relationship and learning to listen to, how do I separate signal from noise? How do I separate intuitive moments from distraction or other influencers, but that takes me away from my gut about something, right? How do I separate those things? How do I practice this every day and even try experimenting with, hey, I got a gut. We got to try it this way. Let's give it a go. Especially on low risk decisions. How can I practice that? Then I can start to cultivate that relationship.
Yeah, good point. So not only is it learnable and achievable, but is this something that you bring to people through your business?
100%. So I wrote the book Decisive Intuition. It came out in 2019, as you mentioned. And ever since then, we built a whole program set based on developing the intuitive intelligence of leaders and teams, mostly because it's such an underutilized and valued and discussed topic. People don't even know how to talk about this or what to do with it. But if you think about it, the most brilliant entrepreneurs and leaders, they trust their intuition. If you talk to them, we've interviewed hundreds of them. They trust their gut. That's what makes them go against the grain and try something different. It's also what our most famous scientists and discoverers and explorers have done. They've learned to trust their gut that, hey, what if we try it this way?
Yeah.
It's actually part of the scientific method. So if you think about it, the very first step of the scientific method is starting with a hypothesis or a hunch. Like, what if we tried electricity this way? What if we tried to bring in a little more carbon and cobalt over here? So it's like having a gut of trying something different. That's intuition.
Yeah.
Now we get to test it out. And does it actually work? So I think it's so underutilized. That's where this came out in our work. Now we really focus on people leadership, and intuition and emotional intelligence are a huge part about being a successful leader today. Those are not the only skills to develop. So we have a whole wide range of skills that we coach on and consult on and train on. And it still is a core thread of what we do, for sure, especially around decision making.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's not only necessary, it's like so many people are not doing that because maybe they feel like there's one way to do thing, or that you have to do this in a particular way. You have to, I read a book on management and leadership and it needs to look like this because that's what the book said, versus like, you may know deep down, you may have
Mhm.
that gut feeling, you may have that intuition that's different. Yeah.
And let me give you a real example. Like, let's say I'm working with a team. Let's say I'm a manager of a team of 8 different people that report to me. Everyone on my team is going to need something different from me as their leader.
Mhm.
Some people might need a little more challenge and accountability in me holding them accountable. Some people might need more space and room to be autonomous and to really have their own ownership of their role and for me to step back. So, how do I actually intuit what each of my direct reports needs on my team that's going to help them be successful? And it's not just a guessing game. We can actually have those conversations out loud.
Yeah.
We can actually check in and say, hey, I'm getting a sense you need a little more space. Am I micromanaging you? Will you let me know? Like, we
Yeah.
can ask those questions. We can have those conversations and start to really learn what's going to help them thrive. So
Right.
that's a very practical way of how do I read the room, even individually on my team, is going to make a huge difference for their output and their engagement also.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility in there, which is important because you're going to have very different employees. You don't get, all the same exact person that you manage in one
Yeah.
particular way. You may need to be very flexible and manage different people in different modalities.
That's a really good point that you made around, like, people might study the school of management or the school of leadership, and then they think that that same way is going to apply to everyone.
Yeah.
So that you're just to your point, that's where you're missing another level of optimization is my ability to really tune into my team. And maybe one approach doesn't work for the other person. We see that all the time. And
Yeah.
so the real successful managers that I see and get to work with, they're able to really recognize, we call it recognizing your growth edge. Like, what is
Mhm.
the growth edge of each of my team members? What's going to help them stretch an additional 20%? How do I even recognize what that is and have that conversation with them out loud?
Yeah.
That's going to help empower them to take ownership of that area or that skill to build or that mindset to shift or
Mhm.
whatever needs to change to make them even more effective.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic point. So as you've been building your company, you talked about COVID, and I think that everybody had a tricky moment during that window. But outside of that, what sort of challenges have you faced as an industry leader?
Let me tell you my biggest mistake I made. And I don't even know if this was not listening to my intuition. I think it was just not knowing, just not having a clue. And so I know a lot of what you guys talk about a lot about is also branding and scaling your brand and what have you.
Yeah.
I made one of the biggest blunders you can make, and so hopefully people learn from what you're about to hear right now. Basically, I got so excited about intuitive intelligence and our own approach and how unique it is, because you always hear like what makes you different, what's a differentiator. I got really excited about that, and so I would, on our old website, it was all about intuition and this and that, and why should you care? And here's the science behind it, and here's the difference it makes. But here's the blunder: people don't care about that. The
Yeah.
audience doesn't really care about that. They care about their own pain that they're in. They care about, hey, we're bleeding people and we don't know how to fix that. Or cash is going out the door and we have no idea what we're doing with our cash
Yeah.
flow. Or, man, our team is just not engaged. We don't know how to shift that. Like, that's
Mhm.
what people care about.
Yeah.
And so I made the mistake of putting my own products and services out front and not really listening to the pain points and the languaging and letting people really know I get exactly what is going on for you right now. I get the challenge you're in,
Yeah.
right? And to share that and to really first connect on that. And so that was a big mistake I made, was leading too much, getting too high on my own supply, as I like to say, and
Yeah.
leading too much with our own Kool-Aid and our own stuff. And once again, that's not why people are going to your website. That's not why they're going to your LinkedIn.
Mhm.
They have something they want to solve. They have a problem, and they want
Right.
to know that you can understand their problem.
Right. They're there for the solution and not the tool. And what you were talking about initially was the tool, when what you pivoted to was to talk about the solution, which is what your tool is able to accomplish. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it for sure. And even if we did mention solutions, we missed the first step around, well, wait a minute, what's your problem? Is this your problem? Are
Yeah.
these the things that are difficult that you're drowning in your business right now?
Yeah.
And so that was a big marketing blunder. And it took me about, I'm going to say, a good year to really get that lesson after
Mhm.
trying to, reshift and refocus. And it's kind of like, marketing branding 101 in many ways. But when it's your own business, it's another thing. When it's your own business, you miss stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it's easier to see someone else's business or coach someone else's business. But when it's your own, you're going to have your own blind spots. And so, even
Mhm.
for me as a coach, it's important for me to have advisors and coaches around me who can also call me out or help me see the things that I'm not seeing about my own company.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Now, how do you see the future taking place in your industry? Because what you're talking about is intuition, which is a very human aspect. And what most industries in general are seeing is this like switch to AI. Would there be any way that AI is going to start taking over intuition?
Here's what I would say. First of all, AI is definitely arrived in the coaching space,
Hmm.
just like in every other space.
Hmm.
We use AI in several different ways in our company right now. And so that's kind of the question a lot of people out there are asking is AI going to get to a point where it's as intuitive and emotionally savvy as humans are?
Hmm.
Right? And that's an interesting world. Here's my sense is that I think there's a great partnership with AI that can make everything better if it's in right relationship. But
Yeah.
here's what excites me, and this is part of what also had me actually write about intuitive intelligence even in 2019. I saw this coming around
Hmm.
AI is because AI is going to take over so many menial tasks, research, synthesis of information, all at lightning speed, like all the amazing thing, design, coding, like all the great things and crazy things it can do.
Yeah.
We need to double down on our human gifts and
Hmm.
our human potential and our human skills and our human intelligence even more so because of the power of AI and what's coming down the pipe.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
because of that, I think it's even more important to think about well, what are the different attributes that we have that are not going to be extinct? In fact, they might even be more in demand.
Hmm.
So, that's where I think there's been a huge hunger and interest, an explosion of people wanting to go deeper and bringing psychology and emotional intelligence, intuitive intelligence. Like it's been catching fire in terms of people learning about themselves, being curious about their own growth mindsets, all the hacks that are out there with, health hacks and subconscious hacks and cold plunging and breath work and all the different things that are out there that
Hmm.
entrepreneurs and leaders are doing right now to optimize themselves. I think we're in an era where it's going to be necessary to double down on what makes us most human.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
What
really
do you
great.
think about that from what you see also?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, as a lead content creator, a lot of times I am creating writing, and obviously ChatGPT is pretty fantastic at cranking out nonfiction content very quickly, much, much quicker than any writer could. But
Mhm,
is it good? And so, think I have come to a point as a consistent reader. I think that
mhm,
reading is one of the biggest parts of writing for me. And so I
mm.
often read a lot in my industry and in my space. And I think I've gotten to a point where I can instantly look at something and say, ChatGPT
Yep.
created that. I know for a fact that this person just relied on ChatGPT to create this because there's no heart and soul. There is no, even if maybe the quirks and the mannerisms are there because somebody asked that in the prompt of ChatGPT,
Right.
I think that it's not there yet. Now, can we get there? I mean, I am incredibly impressed with where it's at in such a short period of time, even though it took 30 years to get to this short period of time. So could it get there? Perhaps. I don't necessarily want to eat my words by saying it'll never be able to capture human emotion.
Mhm,
It could do that by the end of this year. We could see. But for now, there's definitely like this beautiful human element to handwritten things. And I think that that's what people come to me now with versus
mhm.
like, can we write this? Is like, can we write this like as a human? you know?
Yeah. And just to kind of piggyback on that about the human connection,
Yeah.
when and even like working from home versus back in the office, and like the huge movement that's happening right now where a lot of companies are, demanding employees to come back to the office a certain amount of days per week. A lot of companies, I would say the biggest model we're seeing is still a hybrid model where
Mhm.
there's a mix of working from home and then working in the office. But I will have to say, I'm seeing a demand in-person workshops and trainings coming back because I
Mhm.
think a lot of people are craving that in-person connection and being able to develop relationship on a deeper level. So we're
Mhm.
seeing that where we have remote trainings, but a lot of people are actually saying, "Hey, do you actually travel and can you come to our team?" And so that's been an interesting thing. I think because we've been working remote for so long now and kind of gotten used to that, there's almost this other pendulum swing of people who are really hungry for deeper connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I could really see that. In fact, to piggyback on that and perhaps go slightly off topic, as a parent, it
Mm,
was interesting because when I was a kid, we simply played with other kids all the time, and that was just what we
mm,
did. But now growing up and having my own child, I realized like I have to schedule play dates for her. And it's so interesting. And I kind of was like, why do I have to schedule play dates for her? But I realized that as an adult, I have to schedule play dates for myself because as a hyper productive hybrid worker, I am constantly on and I'm constantly working. And so also there's a missing the human element for me where I'm just like, I miss the personal growth that takes place outside of work. So I actually have to schedule play dates for myself,
100%. Yeah, that's very well said. And yeah, that's really cool that you brought in the parenting angle also, because, kids these days are being raised by the internet.
Yeah.
And video games and YouTube and Twitter, all the different social media. It's a whole different world. And a lot of them would rather just be on that device and connect that way than in person. It's changing fast. And so once again, I think that's why being able to develop human relations, human connection, that's why we love people. This is why we love people leadership. This is why we love supporting the conversations that need to happen, because that's the thing that's going to galvanize a team. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that's going to help you align on a strategy that otherwise you'd still be stalling out on, and addressing the elephants in the room so they don't have to hold you back anymore.
Yeah, good point. So what you have is a really fantastic product and an audience that loves what it is you do. How do you work on getting your brand's growth? Do you have any agencies that you work with to help you with either your branding, building your brand bigger, or your performance marketing to make sure that more people are able to see what you do so you have a constant pipeline full of clients?
Yeah, and I think that's usually the hardest part of generating your business is lead generation and getting new leads and new audience members, new eyeballs on your social media and things like that. So I think that is always the challenge. And we've done some things, like we recently brought on a marketing manager that's helping us with a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. In terms of getting a little more visibility and more consistency when it comes to social media presence, newsletters, SEO, all those kind of traditional things. Mm-hmm. We're also bringing in some AI tools that I've never really used before for marketing. Mm-hmm. And it's just like in every other industry right now, AI tools and lead generation is exploding with, there's so many different platforms. I can't even keep track, just like everything else. But we're testing out some different ones right now and just trying to see how does that work in terms of getting out in front of new people, getting new people engaged, because obviously AI can do things in volume and scale more than a human can in pretty remarkable ways, and it keeps getting better. Mm-hmm. So the jury's still out, to be honest, on how effective is this. We're still kind of testing and experimenting with some different approaches that way. But I would say my blue blood and my tried and true method is still referrals and word of mouth. I'm based in San Diego. I went to a networking event last night and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And I met like 10 great professionals in different companies. There were a lot more people there, but I met like 10 solid, people to connect with that, who knows how we can serve and support each other. But there was definitely some good energy, and it just feels uplifting once again to do these in-person things. Because they're becoming more rare also.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I think that some of the ways in which we respond via email or, an SMS or something like that is not the same as how you would respond in person. Like if somebody said, "Oh, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you." You wouldn't just ignore them and never reply back. Versus an email, you get it in your box. And I feel like some just go unreplied forever. You could nudge it back up to the top, but in person is very different. You give a person a chance because they're a real person. Whereas a lot of times with an email, you don't give it a chance because it's just an email.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I think, for whatever reason, people might be reticent to go out of, it's inconvenient to have to leave your home and travel across town, and you don't know is it worth my time? Because my time is super valuable. And it was just great to reconnect also with local, because so much of our business has been focused outside of my local area. It's just been the way it's happened organically. And yet, like that question, that intuition, like, wait a minute, why don't I develop relationships where I live?
Yeah.
It's like obvious, but it just hasn't been where my focus has been. But this year, when 2025 kicked in, I was like, I want to make that a goal. I want to get to know the business community more in my city and put more effort in that. And I think it's great in several different ways. Obviously, could bring more business, but you're also deepening community.
Yeah.
You're deepening ways that you can help each other that might even be beyond business. It could be, a health practitioner that can help that person that's in your field, in your space. So anyway, it's just like so amazing how you can deepening relationships in these ways, I think, can't be replaced by AI. And therefore, we need to look at what are the ways that we can double down on our human connections and the things that have us thrive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not about ignoring AI. Like, it's here. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be even more integrated in our lives. Like, the train has left the station. I'm not fighting it. I'm actually embracing it. I'm just also looking at where can I continue to embolden the parts of me that need self-expression, that need meaning and purpose, and then how do I help others do that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's more like incorporating and enhancing the human element versus replacing it.
The question I've always held is, with AI, are we going to be Terminator or are we going to go to Star Trek?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's always how it came to me is it going to be this thing where we're fighting a more advanced intelligence and it becomes this war, or can we work together to explore the galaxies?
Yeah.
And go even farther.
Great point. Yeah.
I vote for number 2.
Yeah, it would be really wonderful if starting today, everybody who's listening to this podcast, let's use this to enhance humanity and further our causes for intellect versus for warfare. That'd be great.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that's the potential, is truly exploring and going further out in the different technologies that are going to be created over the next 50 years. Or are we just going to be, if humanity doesn't grow up in some key ways, we're going to destroy ourselves with higher advanced technologies or enslave ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really up to us. That's why we got to develop our intuitive intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. And Rick, you are on the cutting edge of it with this intuitiveness. I think that is something that is irreplaceable and very uniquely human.
That's my jam.
Yeah.
That's the thing that gets me excited, man. And it's so cool because I studied psychology originally, and I had no idea back in the day how applicable or useful this would be in the business world.
Yeah.
Because back then, business and psychology were separate. This is before the Googles and the Apples started hiring performance coaches and executive coaches. This is before that.
Right.
So they were actually the first ones to kind of trailblaze, like, oh, actually coaching can be great. We can actually optimize performance.
Yeah.
Right. And it changed the whole game. And now it's amazing to see where people are hungry to learn about themselves, to grow beyond their limiting beliefs and their limiting structures.
Yeah.
And where they self-sabotage and actually find a whole nother level of impact and influence that they can have. So that's where I had no idea it would connect in these ways back then. And I'm just so grateful to see how things have evolved, that we can be more human at work and therefore be more effective too.
Yes. Great point. I love it. Rick, where can people find out more about you and what it is that you do?
Yeah. So go to invisible-edge, LLC.com. That's our website. You can also check out my book, Decisive Intuition, which is on Amazon and all the usual places that you can get books. And then also, if you look at for Invisible Edge or Rick A. Snyder on either Instagram or LinkedIn are probably the best places to try to find me, or YouTube as well.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you. Anybody tuning in, listening right now, I do have to endorse Rick's book because I read it and I love it. And I actually think it's a pretty fantastic read.
Thank you, Sir Jules.
Thank you. Rick, really wonderful to have you on as a guest. I really appreciate all of your insight. I think we talked about some really interesting things, really insightful. So again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.